Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Emily, but you can call me Ems. Today we are here for episode 4 of my craft podcast, which still does not have a name. I've thought about naming it Fiber Friday, but the problem with calling it Fiber Fridays is that I don't always upload on Friday and it's not every Friday. So I don't know. I think craft podcast is about where it's going to be for now. We'll see what happens. I've actually written out a bit of a order of operations here, so we can at least get some stuff done. I'm first going to start with my UFOs or WIPs, so my unfinished objects or my works in progress. So the first one we have is actually an oldie, but I'm going to be doing some work on it. So that's something that's coming up. And that is my corset, my most recent edition of my corset. As you can see, we have some wrinkling at the waist, and then we also have, and that's because the middle of the panel bones are not sewn in the layers, but just added on after the fact in these bone casings that I just whipped, like cross-stitched onto the fabric, which this has helped a lot. This is a lot less wrinkling than we've had before, but we're starting to get that wrinkling that's like pushing the bone up like this, sort of when you have it on you, it's pushing up like this and bowing in a bit and making this weird bump on the hip. And I think a lot of that could be fixed if I sewed the channels directly between the layers. So the plan is for me to take off the bottom binding because that is, or no, the top binding, because that is a smaller circumference than the bottom binding. So we're going to take off the top binding, sew those in. Like right here, you can really see it. There is a really intense crease here that is basically just a fold that's permanently in that fabric when it should be taut. And the bone should be holding it that way, but because this bone casing is just whipped to the fabric and not sewn into it, it's not working. So either, I think the best way to do it is to do the internal bone casings and sewing directly on the mid panel. I don't know why I didn't do that when I did it. I think I was just, when I whipped these extra casings and I was just tired of the corset project. This was my third rendition of it. Like I had an initial mock-up, I had this is my fourth, because I had my first mock-up, I had my finished product that didn't work out so well. It needed to be longer, it needed to be a lot wider at the hip. I winded it at the hip and all that stuff, and then that one also still needed to be wider at the hip. So this is the fourth one that has the coutil on the outside, and then it has pillow ticking on the inside, which is a very finely woven, very strong fabric, because it's meant to keep like down feathers. It feels weirdly plasticky, but it is of natural material, so it just feels really weird. So that's on the unfinished object pile that is going to become the work in progress pile, part of the work in progress pile. So that's why I wanted to mention it first, because this is the only like real unfinished object that like I didn't have plans to be a work in progress, but I think that that's the first step for me really seeing if there is an actual like you can even see there's big folds right here. Like that needs to stop. And I think that this corset could be quite good if I fix these problems. And then maybe I can do some things where I cut high over the hip instead of flat around the hip. So, and that can all be done on this corset without having to cut another one or buy more coutil. Which if I make another corset, it will not be from coutil until I finally figure out the fit, because coutil is very expensive. This is herringbone coutil from Farthingale's Corset Supply in Ontario. And while it's charging Canadian dollars, it's like $32 a meter. And I need like at least 2 for me because I've got a big old body. Especially if I'm doing both layers coutil, which the last 2 corsets were both layers coutil. You guys, this project has been a long time coming and figuring it out, and I feel like the fit of this one is the best that it's been, but it could be better. And I think a lot of the problem is coming from not having those bones internally and being sewn to both layers of the fabric, causing these wrinkles, causing these weird pushing, pulling on the fabric from the bones, this whole thing. So I think that that will be a big change and a big fix. So, and thankfully I didn't floss the whole corset. I did floss these bones. These are my back panel bones, which I think I will not be removing. I don't need to remove the binding for this, but the binding does not touch this flossing. So thankfully, if I do have to remove the binding, that this flossing will stay intact, because I spent a long time doing this flossing and making it look so perfect and nice. But I only did the back panel because that was the one that was the most important to me, and the one that causes the most poking of bones usually, because I have an anterior pelvic tilt, which causes a sway back. So working on that. That's on the docket. Because a big thing is, I don't feel like working on my 1890s wardrobe when I don't have the most basic foundation garment ready and able to be worn every day. So working on that. Once we figure that out, I'll probably make another one. Like once the final pattern's done, I'm probably going to make another one of the everyday style, and then maybe go into like a riding corset or like couch potato corset, that sort of thing. Because I do love the corset and it makes me feel so good when I wear it. Except for those minor problems. So we're going to figure those out. So the next work in progress is actually has been a little bit of a UFO, but it is still on the hook, so to speak. It is my Adventure Tee by Eclair Makery. Oh yes, the pattern for this corset is from Truly Victorian, but I have done significant changes to it so that it's nearly not recognizable. I've made it significantly taller in the back while being the same length at the front. So like you can actually see when I hold up the back, this back is significantly taller. Like it is probably about that much taller, like about 5 inches, not 5 inches, like, yeah, about 5 inches taller in the back than it was originally, while it's still the same length at the front because the bust was perfect. If anything, the bust is a little high. So, but the back is nice and high, which is what it needs to be for 1890s. So that's what we got going on. And I significantly widened the hip as well to 60 inches. So I added 2 inches at the hip. So we get some good, like look at that dramatic hip flare. So I'm very happy so far, but it's just, it got so frustrating. I needed to put it down. So this one's the Adventure Tee. This is something I was working on in the summer months. It is made with Bernat bamboo, True bamboo yarn, which is very interesting to work with, but it is the Adventure Tee from Eclair Makery. It needs significant blocking in the vertical. The width is actually quite good, but it needs some severe blocking in the vertical. But basically it is a map of the world that this is just the bottom of the tank top of the tee. I'm probably gonna make it a tank, but you can see the bottom here is kind of got this ribbing. And then this is the middle of the tee, so it's probably gonna sit about mid bust, but it needs a little bit of length still, but it's gonna sit about mid bust, about here. And then the top looks like a compass and it's really cool. So this has been really, really fun. This is done in intarsia crochet, mostly intarsia. I'm doing a little bit of stranded color work, a little bit of intarsia, basically where it makes sense, because obviously with Russia being so large and long, like Russia through to basically all of Europe into Asia is a very big swath of space. So that had to be intarsia completely. But some of these smaller areas, like up here, when we get into Canada, we need, is that Canada? Yes. Don't know where I'm even from. But yeah, when we get here into Canada, we desperately need to just jump over that, because intarsia right there is just like, okay, that's a lot of things. So we've got that, and don't worry, I've got a progress keeper in. It's a little llama or alpaca or something. I think it's a llama. Cute little llama progress keeper is literally just a charm for charm bracelets from Michaels. But that's been fun to work on when I can. The back is very plain, so I'm working on this front panel first. and then I'll be doing the back panel and then seaming it together, and then either adding sleeves or leaving it as a tank top and just finishing the armholes. We'll see when we get there, but that's a work in progress. This probably won't get a lot of work done on it in the winter because this is very much something that I won't wear until spring, summer. So I might start working on this again in the new year, but I wanted to show it off because I haven't shown it off in a yarn podcast yet or in a craft podcast yet. So I wanted to show that one off. The next one is one I've been meaning to share all of September because it released finally in September. Oh no, I'm still on my unfinished objects, sorry. That's a teaser for later. So the next one is, of course, my 1894 shirtwaist from Truly Victorian. Once again, I've gotten a little bit back into my groove of sewing, so I'm working on that still. I'm planning on this being my project for the night instead of working on knitting. This is going to be what I work on, is getting this sleeve in, but I did find the sleeve, which I lost after my first craft podcast 4 months ago. But I found the sleeve, so I'm going to set this sleeve in tonight. That's my goal for tonight, is setting the sleeve in, and then all I have to do is the hem and then the buttons and buttonholes, and then we are wearable. Even if I just do this, it is technically wearable because it's tucked into my skirts and I can just pin up the front if I need to. So it will at least be wearable but not done by the end of tonight, hopefully. So I got to set that in. I believe I already have my 2 sets of running stitches up through the top. So that'll be my gathering. No, it's okay, buddy. Strahd is angry because he's in the room with me, but I locked Vecna out. And last but not least for my unfinished objects or whips is last but not least for my works in progress is the Beeswax Hat by Baroque Pearls, which I'm very excited about because it's going to be my second ever DPN project, which you'll see my first ever DPN project momentarily. So this is where I'm at now. I'm working on the brim. I'm doing 4 DPNs for the piece, and then I have my extra DPN for working. So that's where I'm at right now. I'm getting no ladders, which is beautiful. There's a little bit of a hiccup right there at the beginning that I need to fix, but I'll fix it with the tail. When I'm weaving it in, I'll just weave it in to tighten up that little beginning portion. And I'm excited about that. I've got nothing exciting on it yet. It's literally just the ribbing, but I'm excited to get this done or to get working on this because it's something that I've been wanting to make for a long time, but I needed to learn how to use DPNs. Technically, the pattern calls for a 16-inch circular for the brim and right until you start decreasing. And when you start decreasing, you go to DPNs. But I ended up really enjoying my first DPN project, so I decided to jump in and use DPNs for this in its entirety because I have a set of 4 instead of 5 instead of just a set of 4. So working on that. So those are my UFOs and whips. Next up is going to be my finished objects. This is an exciting day. We've got 4 projects for you that I finished like literally in the last week, except for, well, one of them I finished right after doing my mesh coat that I showed you in the last podcast. And one of them was the one that I alluded to earlier. So I'm going to jump right into the one I alluded to because I promised it. And that is a test knit that I was part of. And it is the Mellifera Infinity Cowl by Pacific Knit Co., which I always think of as PNW Design because that's her Instagram handle. So this is one that I was part of in August. So this is what I spent most of August on, and what took me away from my Slipstravaganza for a long time is this cowl, but I couldn't show you until September. She released it, I believe, September 2nd. So this pattern is available now that you can check it out. You can see my project notes on Ravelry and all that fun stuff, but it is this really fun infinity cowl. So this is a really nice color work portion with Latvian braid. And then the back is a beautiful honeycomb stitch. And you may recognize this same yarn as the one that I'm doing for the hat. she gave us a total yardage for this, and I ended up using significantly less than was called for in the pattern. So I actually had this whole ball left, this whole cake left. So I was like, you know what, that's enough for a hat. So let's do a hat. Let's go with this. So this was a really, really fun project. I learned so much from this project. This was actually my first ever provisional cast on. It was my first time doing stranded color work in the round, because this is a fully reversible cowl. My first time doing stranded color work in the round, which I realized I actually have a very tight tension. This is meant to be 12 inches long, and it's actually only 10 inches long from Latvian braid to Latvian braid. So, you know, but the fabric itself, the resulting fabric is very stretchy, so it fits really nicely as like a neck warmer cowl. I made the size medium, and I could have gone for a large, but I decided to go for a medium so that it was just like I went for the medium single loop. That's what it is. It was also my first time doing Latvian braid, and not only was I doing Latvian braid, but I was doing 2-color Latvian braid, which was actually very easy. It looks really, really intimidating, and any person out there that's all about yarn control and organization when doing color work, just throw it out the window when you're doing Latvian braid, because the first round your yarns get twisted like crazy, but the second round they untwist themselves because you're twisting them the other way to create this really nice chevron pattern. And sorry if you see a little fly running around. We got a fly in the house. But we have this nice chevron from the Latvian braid. So this was a really fun project that actually taught me quite a lot. I learned several new things from this. The pattern itself is labeled as an adventurous beginner, or at least it was when I was testing it. I don't know if I would want a beginner doing this, but if you know how to knit and you know how to purl and you know how to slip stitches, like knit-wise or purl-wise, you're good. You'll know what to do with this. Maybe practice a swatch of the color work first to practice the color work. But other than that, I think that this is a pretty approachable pattern. This was really fun to make, and I was really happy to be part of the test knit. So this was my first ever test knit. Because I've done a crochet test before, but this is my first test knit, and I've also done a sewing test before as well, which was really cool. But I do love testing patterns because I really like to try things out that are new, that have never been done before. I like to be the first person on it and doing that pattern, but not only being the first person doing that pattern, but also being able to give feedback, especially since I have some reading comprehension problems sometimes. So I like being able to point out where things might be a little confusing or a little weird. And I also really like just making things better, like helping designers make things better. Well, we went a little while before Strahd decided to bark and go crazy and want back in. But when I opened the door, he didn't want in, so he's not in. But that's all I have to say about the Mellifera Infinity Cowl. Like, I didn't really have many notes when I sent it to her, really. Most of my notes were just like, I used significantly less yarn than she did. So that's about it. My next finished object is the one that I finished right after my mesh trench coat, and that was with the Charisma yarn that was left over from the mesh trench coat from fixing the border. I ended up having a lot of extra, so I made this hat. It's literally a simple crochet hat. There is no pattern for this. This is just, I just have memorized so many patterns for crochet hats that I have just figured out the direction that works for me. So I just know the stitch count that works for me. That's the back. That's my seam. I don't want my seam in the front. Figured out the stitch count that works for me. It not gonna release a pattern for it because honestly it's probably the same as like a million basic hat patterns. You don't need me to add another one to the mix. I'll only add things if it's interesting and new or fun or something I want to make and bring into the world. Every time I wear this hat, I look like Silent J. Is it Bob or Silent J? The blonde one. It's probably because of the curls. Like the curls down in the hat. Oops. Is it Bob? I forget which one is Bob and which one's Silent J. But you know, if you know Bob and Silent J, you know who I look like right now. Just like, so the next one is my first DPN project ever, the Maize Mittens from Tin Can Knits. This is the same collection as the flax sweater that you saw in my last episode. That episode was entirely about the flax sweater. And I decided to cast on the Maize Mittens, and I did them as fingerless gloves or fingerless mittens. So these are my Maize. You may recognize this yarn as from my second podcast from the Fiber Festival or the Fiber Gathering. So these I made so that I can go, you know, be in my office and typing without having the heat on all day. Because the heat gets too hot, but then my fingers get really cold, but I still need to type. So like if I keep the mittens on my hands, that keeps warmth there, and I can type away with these nice, fun mittens. I do have enough yarn left of this to potentially make a hat, or at least make the most of the hat and then do the brim in a different color or some kind of color blocking thing with a hat. So I might make a hat with this yarn. I just thought that the Beeswax hat was not the hat for this yarn. I wanted a plain one. So this was a very easy pattern to do as my first DPN project. I really enjoyed it. I found it super approachable. All it is literally knits. Like I think the most you use long tail cast on. At least that's the cast on I prefer, so that's what I did. Knits, purls, make one, not make one left, make one right, just the make one. So like I think it's the make one left. The one where you go in the front of the bar rather than the back of the bar. That's the only thing that you need to know that's fancy. And then this is just the straight up, the normal cast off. Nothing fancy. He's gonna be with Mama for the rest of the episode. He's gonna be on the table with me so that maybe he'll calm the frick down. And the last finished object that I'm so excited about, I considered making this podcast entirely just about this, similar to what I did with the sweater, but decided I don't want to do that very often unless it's a project that I'm like, I've never done this thing before. I'm so proud of this thing. Look at this thing. And the thing I never did before for that one was knit a sweater. But this one I have done shawls before. And if that's a little hint, it is my dun 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 dun. It's my Slipstravaganza. Look at this beautiful, I see you, can you see me? This beautiful, beautiful fabric that has been created. Rejoice with me. Oh, I'm so happy with it. It blocked so beautifully and lovely because I made this entirely of wool. Well, it's wool nylon blend because it's all sock yarns, but this is my first like fully wool project that's like bigger than just like this and this. Hi. Y'all gonna have to deal with this. But this blocked so nicely. I was so worried it was getting so wrinkly in here. You could barely see these diamond patterns that are in it. Like, see those diamonds coming out here? So gorgeous. I'm so excited about it. All my pictures I'm getting of it do not do the colors justice because the colors are so bright and beautiful and fluorescent neon gorgeousness. Is it Della or Adela or Adele of Lola Bean Yarn Co., the main color? She said it's black light reactive, which I'm so excited about. You gotta get out of the way, honey. Oh, that's a lot of scramble. She said it was black light reactive, which I'm super excited about. I clearly need to get black light for my light up there. and this is like the best thing I've knit like ever. It's so fun. I enjoyed it much more than the shawlography. I don't know if it's because the shawlography is a lot of different techniques, whereas this is all slip stitch techniques, so it's a lot of the same technique in a different way. Or if it's because of the colors, or if it's because I know more about knitting now, so it felt more approachable and more fun. Or maybe it was because it wasn't a mystery and I knew what was coming out, so I could pick my colors accordingly. Maybe that's what it is. Hi, Poddle. So this taught me nothing. I literally didn't learn anything from this shawl. I knew all the techniques from it, but if anything, it taught me patience. Because that chevron border at the bottom, like after those short row triangles, that chevron is like 900 plus stitches per row. Per row. So like, and at the end, I totally played yarn chicken. These, underneath these stripes are all supposed to be 6 rows. The first 3 are 6 rows, but the final 3 are only 4 rows each because I ran out of yarn. And that's mainly because the Patton's Croissant is slightly thicker of it's not a sport weight, it's still a stocking weight, like a sock weight yarn, like a fingering weight yarn, but it is just slightly thicker. Therefore, it's a little bit heavier. Therefore, 100 grams of it does not go as far as 100 grams of name any other dyer. So we ended up doing that. I ended up having a fair amount of the Lola Bean Yarn Co. It's Bean Sprout and Sugar Skulls, by the way, if anyone wants to know. I ended up with a fair amount of it left, so I'm thinking, and a little bit of all these colors, contrast colors left, so I'm thinking of making 2 tassels to go right at the points at the end. But look at this beautiful curved shape you get. So this back triangle piece is flat, and then this is curved, dramatically curved, so that it fits around your shoulders beautifully, and I love it. This is probably gonna be my favorite thing I've made all year. Sorry, Flax, move on over, because this one takes the cake. My next thing I want to talk about is yarn acquisition / stash dive, and there are no new acquisitions since the last time we spoke, so let's go for a stash dive. Realized I didn't have my stash dive with me, so I had to go run to my stash and grab it. I even planned for what I was going to dive into and talk about today, and that is Bernat Heartland, which is, I think it's just the worsted weight version of their hometown yarn, which I really like the hometown yarn. That's their like chunky, super chunky, like acrylic yarn. And this is the 2 colors I decided to bring out to show you. This one is Yosemite. It's a beautiful pumpkin-y orange. Sorry, it's kind of golden hour, so you're getting a lot of gold tones. That's more correct. He's right here. And then this one is Black Canyon. It's black, but it's got some kind of gray flecks through it. So these are both acrylic yarns. I'm, again, not against acrylic yarn. It's not my favorite for garments, unless they're crochet. I prefer acrylic for crochet over knitting, but I do knit with acrylic on occasion, especially for gift knitting. But acrylic yarns, you can get some really bright, like that orange next to that black is so bright. You can get some gorgeous bright colors. Obviously, you can get gorgeous bright colors with wool as well, but this is definitely more the budget option. So they're heathered or tweed colors. They're all kind of heathered or tweedy. So they're kind of multi-dimensional and really beautiful. They're super, super soft. I don't know if you can tell, but they've got a bit of a sheen to them. And I wouldn't call it a plasticky sheen like some acrylic yarns have, but it's just a nice shine to it that's really pretty. And those are the ones that I wanted to show you today. So again, those are the Lion brand Heartland. Did I say Bernat? I might have said Bernat Heartland. It's Lion brand, sorry. Not sponsored, as usual. I've never had a sponsor on this channel. I don't foresee it happening unless they email me. Who knows? But those are my yarn acquisition / stash dive. And then finally, last but not least for my podcast as usual, is my recommendation / media section. So this is kind of the section where I talk about what I've been reading and listening to and watching and consuming and all that fun stuff, and talking about what I've been reading and if I recommend it or not, all that good stuff. So first things first is a book I have been reading. Physical book that I've been reading is The Duke and I, which is from it's what Bridgerton's based off of, by Julia Quinn. And The Duke and I is Daphne's story, so it's very specifically Daphne and Simon. It's very different from the TV show in the sense of it's basically just Daphne and Simon. It doesn't have all the side characters. So it delves a lot more into their courtship and all that fun stuff. I'm actually quite surprised by how much I'm enjoying the book itself, because I'm actually not a big romance person when it comes to adult fiction. I much prefer YA. If I'm doing romance, I want YA because it's more tame. However, because this is historical fiction romance, so like historical romance, because this is a historical romance, it's not as explicit, and the like erotica, ooh, doodly-doo parts are a little more tame so far. I'm like 60-something% of the way through the book, so I'm gliding right along. I'm actually quite surprised. I'm probably going to do some more reading of it tonight, along with working on setting that sleeve in. The audiobook I'm listening to, because I listen to audiobooks while I work, and I also listen to audiobooks while I sew, knit, crochet, anything where I'm using my hands and using my eyes to look at a project. Audiobooks are the way to go. I've been listening to The Golden Compass by Philip Pullman. I read The Golden Compass when I was in, I think, middle school or early high school, and I barely remember it. I barely remember it. I got it for Christmas one year, and I remember reading it, and I remember liking it, but also not understanding it very much. So going back and listening to it now is very interesting now that I, one, have better reading comprehension skills. I know that I said that I have poor reading comprehension. It's, when it comes to like technical things, I still really struggle. So like knitting patterns, I still struggle. Crochet patterns, I still struggle, that sort of thing. But reading books now, I'm well practiced because of my degree. I have a double major in English and religious studies. So I've got a lot of practice with reading and understanding and taking my time, especially now that I can take my time to really understand things. And with an audiobook, audio-like, I can take it in a lot easier as well. So I've been shocked and amazed at like all the religious stuff in it. And I know that Philip Pullman is like an atheist. And it's very interesting to see some of that coming out in the book, in the sense of it's kind of a world that is run by the church, and how that's playing out. And a lot of what the characters are doing are called blasphemous or sinful or things like that, and against the church, and it's trying to be hidden and all that fun stuff. So fun stuff. So it's been very interesting to listen to now that I have that, not only religious studies education, but that ability to really absorb and understand contextually what's going on. I'm enjoying it a lot. And honestly, I think even as an adult, like I'm almost 30 and I'm getting a lot out of reading the book. I think it's, for children, it's a really fun fantasy book. For adults, it really makes you question things and think about things a lot more. So I think it's a great one to read with your kids. Movie, I actually recently have been watching some of the Disney Halloween stuff because I got a month of Disney Plus, so I decided to just like watch some different Disney Halloween themed things because as soon as September hit, I was jonesing for some Halloween. So I am actually going to recommend Muppets Haunted Mansion, which is completely and utterly ridiculous. It is all that you love about the Muppet Show. It is the actors that you know and love being themselves but acting at the same time, and the Muppets being weird and just, it's funny. the Muppet Haunted Mansion, definitely worth a watch. The TV show I've been watching is Dragula on Shudder, which is, I guess, the gothy, spooky, off the beaten path weirdos version of Drag Race. So it's about being the next drag super monster instead of the next drag superstar, So that's been really fun to watch because, especially since I've been getting more and more into horror films this year, it's been nice to watch that and understand a lot of the references that they are making and seeing the really cool horror, gothy, unabashedly queer looks and a lot of gender bending, whereas Drag Race does a lot of very high femme vibes. Dragula is very gender fluid. They had a drag king on there. The current season I'm watching has a bio queen, so a cis woman who's being a drag queen. All that fun stuff. They've got trans women queens, which I know that RuPaul's Drag Race has trans queens as well, but it's really cool to see all kinds, just more fluidity and it's more about performance. It's less about looking pretty and beautiful and more about doing the challenge and stepping outside of your box and your comfort zone while still being you and surprising the judges. And it's more centered around a floor show rather than just walking a runway. So you actually have to put on a full performance, which is awesome to see more performance. And the eliminations are kind of crazy. So if you're really squeamish, you don't like blood, you don't like guts, you don't like, bugs and things, probably don't watch it because the elimination rounds are brutal. Sometimes I just make them straight up get a tattoo, which I'm like, bring it on. But everything else, I'm like, no. If I still was a drag king, I'd be like, nope, going on there. So the podcast I'm recommending this time is The Sleepy Bookshelf. The Sleepy Bookshelf is a podcast that I found on Spotify that is literally just a narrator doing a little wind down, a little stretch, that sort of thing, and then reading a chapter of a book. The books are mostly kept intact. However, they change anything shocking or scary and tone them down or take them out while leaving the plot intact. That way it doesn't shock you awake or anything. So the first one was Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, which I just finished. And the second book they have on there is Pride and Prejudice, which I've just jumped into, which I love Pride and Prejudice. So that was nice falling asleep to listening to Pride and Prejudice last night. The YouTube channel I'm going to recommend is the Night Sky Knitting Podcast, who is a fellow Canadian. It is a knitting podcast by fellow Canadian, and she does some really cool insights and talks a lot about, the yarn that she's using, and very opaque about her sizing and what size she made and about how that does fitting. The beginning of the podcast, she talks about her measurements so that if you're really bad at being like, yeah, that's a size medium, but what does a medium mean when it fits like that on you? What are your measurements? We can't really tell what that's about. Really great, which is 10 out of 10. So I'm going to recommend her podcast, and you can click on it down in the description box below. And the video game recommendation, I don't know if I've done a video game recommendation on my episodes yet, but I'm going to recommend one because I played it again last night for the first time in over a year, and I keep forgetting how fun this game is, and it's Just Dance. I have the 2020 version on Switch, and it is so fun. I did like 3 or 4 songs last night in the like superstar mode or whatever, the mode that is like, it just gives you the next song, which has been super fun because it's going through songs that are technically not on the game, that aren't on the 2020 version of the game. Because the cool thing about Just Dance is you might have Just Dance 2020, but if you have the unlimited pass, which is I think a monthly fee, but if you play it a lot, it might be worth it. You then get access to all the new songs, and they're always adding new songs on that, which is kind of cool. So that has been really, really fun to watch, and not to watch, but to play. Playing that again last night. I don't know if I'm going to play it again tonight because it is a bit warm in the house today because it's very sunny outside for some reason. So that has been very enjoyable. But I wanted to thank everybody for watching today. I know I'm going to have to do a lot of editing because of Mr. Sausage Man right here. Mr. Sausage Man being a loud, scratchy, borky little man. So I'm going to have to do a little bit of editing, but not too much. Mostly just sticking my clips together and cutting the beginning and ending off of them so that they flow nicely or jump cut somewhat nicely. I'm not a fan of editing. That's the problem with YouTube, is I don't like editing videos most of the time. But thankfully, a lot of these yarn podcasts are very easy to put together. So that's what we're going to do right away. If I don't edit this now, it's not going out. So I'm definitely going to be doing that right away. But that is going to be it for today. So thank you guys so much for watching. Comment down below what you're working on right now and your Ravelry username so that I can follow you. You can follow me at emsisfab on Instagram, Twitter, or Ravelry. And I hope to see you again on the next episode. I love you lots. Bye, guys.